Alright, at this point, before we start in the cab, you're going to want to disconnect your battery terminals from your vehicle so you don't shock yourself or anything during your electrical installation. So we've already removed the negative terminals from the battery, and you should do the same. Hello, so now that we're done with all the work underneath the vehicle, we're going to be opening the next box that you should have in front of you. It's the premium pump pack box, and I'm going to open it. And as you open it, the first box you come to on the lid, you're going to notice it's got an important message. What's in there is a sticker for your dash, which is important. I would put it on your dash. It says to operate the vehicle in four-wheel drive low at all times and maintain speeds under 30 kph. And then there's instructions in here on where to put it in the dash. So just so you know. Then you open it up a little further, and these boxes are just fillers for cushioning as well. Then we have another box. This box contains all the installation hardware for your electrical connections. And then you've got your main power harness, the big black plug on the end, and black and red wires. And then you've got your breaker switch. This goes under the hood and will cut the power if there was ever too much heat or whatnot. It'll blow this breaker before it damages anything in the vehicle. And then you've got, this is your dash panel. You're not going to be using it in the dash, you'll be using it in the floor mount box, which I'll be getting to in a couple seconds. So this will actually go in the place of the parking brake cable. It'll be sitting in between the driver and passenger seat there. So that's what that is. And then we've got the last thing in the box there is your controller harness. So you'll see it's got a blue wire that'll be for your door switches. It's got a yellow wire that'll be for your oil pressure switch. The red wire goes to your ignition, and then each one at this end will go to your base plate with the brake relay kit in between, and this gets plugged into your pump pack. So we'll go over all that later, don't be concerned. And then the last thing is the high pressure premium pump pack. This is what you have to release the brakes, and it's got all sorts of various capabilities. It's got your error codes on the front if you should have an error code, but this is where your harnesses are going to plug into, and this is what pressurizes the brakes to release the parking brake. So that's all that's in the box.
Go.
Alright, the next thing we have here that comes in its own container is a brake light relay kit, which you guys have ordered. This makes it so that your brake lights actually work with the system, so that when you have the parking brake set, the brake light will come on and it'll work just like it normally would. Alright, and then this little box is the floor box assembly. This is because you guys are going to be mounting the dash mount on the floor where the parking brake is normally, instead of where the radio goes. So we've got this box here. So as you can see, there's instructions inside, and then a grommet that's going to go in here, and this is going to mount to the floor, and we'll go over that in a little bit. Alright, so we're in the cab of the vehicle, and the first things that you're going to want to do in here is remove the kick plates at the bottom of the doors. you're also going to want to remove the gray basket that sat back here, as well as you can remove any of the jack equipment and stuff that was on this back wall. The first thing you're going to want to do is pull your high pressure hose up through the grommet hole in the floor there, and that's going to get connected to your pump pack. So the next thing you're going to want to do is where that bucket was mounted, there's some metal fasteners that are on the back wall. What we've done is used a cutoff wheel, cut them down as flush as we could get them, and then grind them down to get rid of all the sharp edges. Might be kind of hard to see, but yeah, we ground them as flush as we could get them. And then from there, you're going to want to make sure you should already have your parking brake out. You will leave this plate in, and all 4 of the original bolts, we're going to be reusing those eventually. And then from there, you're going to want to have the gauge cluster removed, the speedometer and all that, and then the steering wheel column covers. Those will all be removed, and then you can just pull this bottom panel down below the steering wheel and push it down out of the way, because we're going to be doing some wiring work in there. Alright, the next thing you're going to want to do is remove the warning sticker from the premium pump pack box and place it, like we have done, right below an air vent right next to the steering wheel. That way the driver can see it every time they get in the cab. The next thing in line is going to be grabbing some 25mm spacers. As you can see, I've got a couple of metal blocks under our pump pack there on the back wall. Those are used so that we know we have enough clearance for our wiring harnesses that plug in to the side of the pump pack over here. They're not plugged in yet, but they'll run underneath that pump pack. So you want to make sure you have clearance under the box, and then you want to make sure that it's level as well, because there will be fluid in there. And once you get that taken care of, you're going to want to mark your holes, your mounting holes, which there's one on that arm, there's another arm over there, and then on the other side you've got a hole there and a hole down at the bottom. So you can mark all 4 of the holes once you know where you're going to have it mounted, and then you're going to be drilling those holes. So after your holes are drilled for mounting the pump pack to the back wall, you're going to want to grab your bag of hardware out of your pump pack kit and retrieve the 4 M8 by 25mm bolts, 4 washers, and 4 nylon lock nuts, which will mount the pump pack to the back wall. Now, if you've got your bed on your back of your truck, you might need a second hand for somebody to hold all the nuts onto the back wall with the washers. The washers and nuts go on the outside of the truck, and the bolt heads go through the holes in the brackets on the pump pack by themselves. Alright, so you should have all 4 of your mounting bolts in for your pump pack. They need to be nice and tight because you need to get a proper ground for your electrical system. That's how this is grounded properly. So make sure these are making good contact with that back wall. And then from there, you're going to want to remove your cap from your connector up here, which your premium pump pack high pressure line is going to come in, and you can tighten that down. Alright, now we've got our high pressure line tightened fully onto our connector here at the top of the pump pack. So go ahead and remove all 4 of your bolts from your premium pump pack and take the cover off. And the reason that we're taking the cover off is because we're going to hook our harnesses up now to the pump pack, and starting with the main electrical, this will end up going to your automotive battery under your hood. So this can only go in one way, so pop that in till it connects, firmly, and then take your other connector harness with the side with the blue wire coming out of it, and you're going to want to hook it up. It's keyed, but I've seen people force them in backwards, so make sure that you're putting the side with the red wires up. As you can see inside the pump pack, the red wires are on top. You're going to want to pop that in and push it in firmly until you hear 2 clicks from both tabs being locked in, and it should be fastened nice and tight. Alright, so now we want to take our harnesses that are plugged into our pump pack and run them under the pump pack, all of them, over to where the seat used to be on this side of the vehicle. And you're going to take your small and your bigger gauged wire with the orange plug on it, and you're going to want to bundle this up because this is going to stay under the seat here and leave enough room for this to go into your floor mount box. Okay, the reason there's so much cabling is because this usually goes up to the radio slot, and there's got to be enough for that purpose. So you're going to want to leave some loose so that can go into your floor mount box like so. Then after you do that, have your floor mount box ready to go, and you're going to want your dash panel, floor panel to go take the brackets off. These 4 Allen bolts take the brackets off because that's going to mount on top of your box. And you're going to want to get some RTV silicone. We use Loctite 598 black, but you probably find something that's equivalent to that. Alright, so now take your floor mount box, and what you're going to want to do is obviously remove all your bolts from your old parking brake area here. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put some of this black RTV around all these bolt hole locations on the bottom of your box. Then you can put this down where it mounts, and then you're going to want to also put black RTV on all your threads and then tighten those down appropriately. So after tightening down the floor mount box, you're going to want to put your protective grommet for when you pull your wires in the hole like I've got it here. Then you're going to want to go to your big bundle of wire here and follow the red wire to the end, and you're going to want to add about 60 centimeters of wire like I did here, because we're using a floor mount box, so we need a little bit more distance on the cable. Now for the brake light relay kit, you're going to want to do the same thing as you did with the red wire, and as you can see here, I've spliced in 2 longer wires, approximately 60 centimeters longer, to make that harness just a little bit longer so you can get to where you need to go. So after removing your brackets from your dash mount kit, dash panel, you're going to want to take your dash panel and you're going to need to remove this nut here holding this bundle of wires together right here, because this will get in the way when you try to place this on the floor mount box. So remove that plastic holder. You can keep it on the wires if you want, but it's going to have to be removed. Alright, next step is going to be taking your brake relay kit and taking the wires the 2 wires you just added onto, and from the inside of the floor mount box, you're going to want to pull all your cabling through and have that sitting in there, kind of like so for now. Then you're going to come back and grab this big bundle here with the red wire and the extra loom coming off of it, and you're going to want to put that in to your floor mount box from the back side. And then what you can do is line your wire colors up and connect the brake light relay kit same way you did on the pump pack till they click. Okay, then you're going to want to shove your whole brake light relay kit in there without doing any damage. And from there, you can take your dash panel that you removed the nut off the back of. And you're going to want this to face the driver's side, whichever way the driver's side is. And then line your wire colors up again. Push it on. And then you're going to want to push it all inside that box ever so carefully as to not damage any of the controls in there. This can be a little bit of a frustration to get it all in here, but it goes in. You can see your wires, so it'll go like that, and then put your bolts in. Alright, so I'm going to talk about this yellow wire and blue wire that are each in their own singled out loom with knots in them. They should have knots in them so you can't pull them back through. So the yellow wire, this will be going all the way up to your engine oil pressure switch. That way, if you were to lose engine oil pressure while you were driving or whatnot, or in park, whatever, it'll automatically set your parking brakes so that you don't lose control and run away. Now the blue wire, that is your door switch wire. What you're going to want to do with this is take it up behind the dash cluster here, and there's a plug up here that's got, you can see I've already had it soldered to it at one point, but it's a black wire, and it is 7 spots over on the side with the tab on it. That's 7 from the left, 7 spots. It's a solid black wire, and you're going to want to tie it in there. That way, if somebody opens their door, it'll automatically set the parking brake. And if you forget to push this, because it's a little different, you're used to pulling up on a parking brake, it'll automatically set the parking brake for you. It's another safety feature. Now, you don't have to use those features if you don't want to. If you don't want to, you can bundle these up and bundle them up back by the pump pack, or you can cut them off and cap them. They're just signal wires, so you can make that choice on your own. But for the most part, most of our customers like these safety features, and we do recommend them for use. Alright, the next wire we have is the lone red wire, which is coming from your main harness that came from your pump pack and connected in here. You're going to want to run that with the other wires up into the steering column, and you're going to be tying it in to your 12 volt ignition enabled wire, which ours is this white wire. However, if you've got a 12 volt test lamp, I would definitely check and make sure that yours is white as well. It might be something different. Check your wiring schematic or whatever you need to, but that's where the red wire is going to go to. It's going to supply power to your PLC computer in the premium pump pack. Alright, the next 2 wires we have are also 2 that we extended and made longer. Green and yellow wire, which comes from your brake light relay kit. Those are going to go up into the steering column as well. And to the left of the steering wheel, you'll find a brown plug with 2 wires in it. One wire will be green with a yellow stripe, and the other wire will be solid green. The solid green wire will match up to our solid green wire, and the green wire with the yellow stripe in the plug will match up to our solid yellow wire. So those need to be tied in as well, and that's what will give you your brake lights when you set your parking brake, etc. So to the left of our steering wheel, you'll find the brown plug that I was talking about. It's got the green wire with yellow stripe and solid green wire in it, and that's where you're going to be running your brake light relay kit to. Okay. Alright, so I've tied my red wire into my ignition, and now we're going to come up to where the gauge cluster was, and you'll see that I brought my single blue wire up here, and that's going to get tied into this black wire in this plug that plugs into the back of the speedo gauge, and then the green and yellow wire from our brake light relay kit I brought up here as well. And I also fished the brown plug that is the brake pedal switch plug. I fished that up from down next to the steering wheel so that I can do my soldering work up here, because it makes it a lot easier. Then you can pull everything back down and plug it back in down there. Alright, so at this point we have ran all the necessary wires up to the ignition switch, the plug that connects to the speedometer gauge for the door switches, and to the brake pedal switch plug for our brake light relay kit. So all that's done. So I've ran my hoses or harnesses all along the bottom here, out of the way of all movement of parts, and brought them back. These are the only two harnesses that are left. You got your power cables and you got your yellow oil pressure switch wire, and those now we're going to shove through the grommet that goes through the firewall right here. Okay, so after you've pulled your power harness and your yellow wire in the loom through the firewall, you're going to want to take your yellow wire and run it behind here, which this is your master cylinder here. Run it behind here, and then I zip tied it here in a couple places, and it's just loose right now. And this is going to go down to your oil pressure switch if you choose to use that function. So if you can see, I'm pointing at the oil pressure switch with this telescopic magnet here. It's right there. There's actually a plug that slides on to it, and you're going to want to pull that off and then tie your yellow wire into that wire and then slide it right back onto the oil pressure switch. Alright, so the next thing we have here is our circuit breaker. As you'll notice, if you look closely, it says load right in here and line right in here. So your load is going to be your red wire coming in from your pump pack, which is in this power harness here. You're going to be running your red wire into here, cutting off the extra red wire, and then running the rest of the red wire from here to your positive terminal on your battery. Your black wire in here, you're not going to cut it all. You're going to run that straight to your negative terminal on your battery, and you're going to be obviously cutting your loom down so that you can get to your red wire. So you're going to want to save the loom and use that for the rest of the black wire, and you should have some extra small loom that you can use for your red wire to run to the positive terminal on your battery. And I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done, because it's kind of hard to explain. So that's the best I'm going to explain it now. You can see what it looks like as the finished product here in a minute. So we're back to the circuit breaker. Keep it in the off position, and you're going to want to find a spot under your hood where you're going to put it. Now obviously we don't have as much in our truck as you guys probably will, but we decided to mount ours right on the above the wheel well here. The battery is right over here, and you know, our cables come in the firewall down here, so it's a nice happy medium right in between. So we're going to mount ours about right here. So the important thing is these are weatherproof circuit breakers. They're rounded on top, rounded on bottom, so wherever you put it, it'd be better if you had it so that if water was going to lay on it, it would be on one of these rounded areas. You don't want water sitting on the flat top or the side or anything like that. So just keep that in mind when you mount it, to try to have it like that, or you can have it upside down. Obviously you're going to be screwing it in on this mounting plate, so keep that in mind. So I've decided to mount ours right here. So what I've done with the wiring, the power wires, I've cut the loom down just the loom, and made it so that it reaches our terminal on this side of the breaker, which is the load side, because the load side is where our harness comes from, our pump pack. So I've cut that down, and I've pulled the black and red wires apart all the way down to the loom. And now what I'm going to do is cut off the red wire right here and put a boot and an eye terminal on that, and connect it to the load side of the breaker. Then the red line that I cut off is going to go from the line side to the positive terminal on the battery. Then the black line is going to go straight to your negative terminal. So you're going to need 2 of the red boots, and you're going to need 4 eye terminals in total. Now for reference, these are what the red boots look like. They're in your hardware bag, and each one of these will go on the nuts that are on the circuit breaker. So make sure you put those on your red lines before attaching the ring terminals, or they can be a challenge to get over the ring terminals. And then here are your ring terminals, which have the built-in heat shrink, so you can take a lighter to it or a flame and shrink it down around the wire. Okay, so as you can see, I've got my line coming in, my power line coming in from the firewall, and that red line got cut down and a ring terminal put on, as well as the boot right there, and got tightened down on the load terminal of the circuit breaker. Now here's my line that I cut off from the other side of the circuit breaker. This is the line side, and this is going to get attached to the line bolt with the boot, and then the line's going to go down, and you're going to attach that to your positive battery terminal. And then before doing that, you might want to put some protective loom on this. You know, we cut this off before so you can reuse it, or whatever you feel the need to do. So when you're all said and done with hooking up your 2 red lines to your circuit breaker, this is somewhat what it should look like. I'm sure you guys will probably use fire sheathing or something like that, some kind of protective loom around the wires. And then you'll also see my negative line that's coming out from the firewall is going behind it. Now I'm going to end up putting some smaller loom on that I ended up removing from our blue wire for our door switches inside the cab. Okay, so here's the finished product. So we've got our power cable, black and red wires coming in, and then the black wire splits off, goes behind the circuit breaker. The red wire comes into the load terminal on the circuit breaker, and then we cut our red line and we hooked it back up on the line side of the circuit breaker. And the line side I ran up to the positive terminal of the battery, and then back to the circuit breaker. We can see the negative line comes back behind here, goes alongside the battery, and hooks in right here to the negative terminal. Okay, so at this time you can go ahead, if you haven't already, and fasten this down where you decided to mount it with the bolts in the back, and you can go ahead and flip it on into the on position as long as you're done with everything.